Alright, good day everyone. Okay, welcome back to another round of e-learning. As you're aware by now, structured essay questions is one of the modes of assessment that the RP adopts to evaluate your competence in SS. Alright, so today's lesson in a way is to refresh your understanding of the answering technique to SEQ. Okay, the objective of today's lesson is rather simple. It is to recommend you an effective method in dealing with SEQ. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to answer the SEQ in a structured sequence such that your answer appears clear, concise and well organized. For the purpose of this lesson, we will attempt to answer this question. Alright, how far do you agree that the official language policy was the most critical factor that led to the conflict in Sri Lanka? Alright. Okay, not to worry about the content knowledge for this question. All you need to learn is really the answering technique to it. Alright. Alright, before you begin, you might like to do this first. Alright, your first task is to take these steps. Alright, first, to analyze the question. This is to help you understand the nature of the question. You need to ascertain if the question requires you to evaluate the factors, alright, concepts, etc. Next, you need to identify the given factor, alright, which in this case obviously is the language policy, and you need to figure out the issue, which is conflict in Sri Lanka. Alright, now this one you need to take note. There's no time frame in this question, but if you have studied about Sri Lankan conflict, and you will know that a civil war actually broke out sometime in the early part of 1980s, and actually that's a good gauge because eventually you need to encapsulate the main factors. Alright, your time frame must be able to capture the main factors, otherwise you will fall short of explaining the integral factors behind the conflict. And finally, you also want to list the other factors out first, such as discriminatory government, unequal opportunities, education, resettlement policies, if you are aware, and then the Tamil Tigers, and of course intervention by India. These are some of the factors that you should know if you have studied about it. Alright, and if you have clarified these potential pitfalls, you can proceed to answer the question. Alright, for this type of question, you must do the following. First, write an introduction, then explain the given factor. This is a must. Do not run away from this factor, otherwise you will lose a lot of marks. Third, you must explain the other factors, and finally conclude with explicit consideration of or weigh the factors, right? So that you can establish the most important factor. Now I will skip this step for this presentation because I would rather discuss this in class. Alright, and I think your teachers will also rather discuss this in class because this part is rather complex. But for the first three parts, definitely we can discuss it here. Alright, introduction. Okay, best is what you need to do for your introduction is really to give an overview. Alright, give an overview of the various of the conflict, right, including the given factor. Alright, once you're done with this, try and give or write your thesis. Alright, in so doing, you give your reader or the examiner an idea of what you actually are arguing for. Alright, and that is important. The next step is obviously to explain the given factor, as I said just now. So in the given factor, you must observe this rule. Basically, to give the point, elaborate and clarify the point, give evidence, and finally establish the link. Alright, writing the given factor. Now I would prefer you to write the factor in two parts. First, write a generic understanding of the given factor, which is from here to here. Alright, again, writing the generic factor is very similar to, you also apply the peel. Alright, basically, first write the given factor, identify it, clarify what it's all about, and explain how it can actually lead to a conflict. Right, in the case of language policies, you can see it for yourself. It only decides whether one can gain a job in the civil service or, as a matter of fact, in other sectors, because proficiency in The proficient level of a official language actually determines the kind of jobs that you can actually apply for. And when you are not proficient in language, and you are likely to be hurt because issues of bread and butter becomes a concern. Alright, and obviously when communities realize that they are disadvantaged as a result of the language policy, they will start to oppose the government's action. Now this segment onwards, right, is basically a contextualized discussion of language policy being a factor in the conflict in Sri Lanka. Alright, it was implemented in 1956. The language was used for administration and other purposes. Many of the Tamils were at an disadvantage because they couldn't speak the language, and for example, they were asked to master the language in 3 years. Alright, and that made the Tamils very unhappy. Right, in the long run, they are going to lose their jobs if they are not proficient in the language. Right, and at the same time, you'll find that some companies also require the Tamil population to actually be able to speak the language in their administration. So all these culminate in this result in the issues of bread and butter, correct or not? Now this is an important statement. Alright, the Language Act deprived the Tamils of their livelihood and could eventually threaten their survival. Realizing this, the Tamils staged a peaceful protest which later escalated into conflict, and that led to the loss of life. And this is basically how the conflict became violent. So as I said, first try to give a generic explanation of what this factor is all about, how it